Here, in fact, there is a local microprocessor engineer working with some of our young ex-trainees, now employees, in a company called Digitalent, which has been floated out in a very unconventional fashion between us, the London Borough of Hammersmith, and private money from the businessman himself. They are intending to make and market polyphonic synthesizers for the music market, and as they reach certain levels of throughput, so they will take on more young ex-trainees. Not only that, Nottingdale will begin to make its share of the profit of the sale of the product. So it has a double function to support more research and development for more products for more companies, and also to create local employment. That's duplicated now 5 times over. We have 5 small companies popping out of Nottingdale as a kind of mother company.
Well, Mr. Baker, will there be other places like that opening up throughout Britain?
Yes, there already are 100, and we're going up to 150. And I think you're opening one at Inverness next week, aren't you, mate?
I am indeed,
right.
Yes, that's true.
And they are by far the most successful training centres in the country for any skills. The placement rate for jobs is very high. In Toxteth, for example, the placement rate of trainees is 70%. And what is so good about these centres really came out at the beginning of your programme when you warned against high priests and jargon. And these centres train people who've left school probably with 1 O-level, a couple of CSEs. They're not double firsts, they're not mathematical wranglers, they're not high priests, but they're people who can cope with these technologies, and you saw them on that film, learning simple things like computer operation, electronic assembly, actually programming.
Will there be jobs for them when they come out of this training in the long term?
Well, the placement rate for these centres is very successful indeed, but the whole of the microelectronics revolution is creating jobs. You know, once heard a bit on this programme about the BBC Micro, but in 1980 there were, 40 people employed by Acorn. Well, now there are about 250. And I've seen around the studio some of the VDUs that Richard Fothergill and others have been using. These are Microvitech. Now, that's a company in Bradford that didn't really exist in 1978-79. It employs over 200 people now. So there are jobs actually in the microelectronics industry itself. But as Chris Webb was saying on that film, whatever you're in, whether you're in a garage business or engineering business, you have to be able to cope and use microelectronics and computing.
I can see the short-term benefits of putting micros in schools. What's the long-term strategic thinking?
Well, I would like every youngster who leaves school at 15 or 16 to have actually had hands-on keyboard experience so that they're not shut out from what's going to affect their lives very profoundly. Because it's going to affect them in their home, in their jobs. So that's the strategic objective, to make them computer literate, if you like, to use a fancy phrase.
There have been, of course, quite a lot of lower-level jobs. For example, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, there were no shops actually selling micros.
Yes.
That's a whole new area of retailing.
Oh, yes. That's big. It's not only in the retail side, but it's also in the software side as well. I think that in the past, people have tended to concentrate upon the hardware. That's like the grand piano. But the grand piano is no good without the music. And it's the software that is the music. And we're very good at writing software. I want to see more software written. I'm very pleased the work that Richard Fothergill's doing up at Newcastle Polytechnic, and more software companies are springing up all the time in Britain.
He seems to be very good at writing software, but we don't seem to be awfully good at selling it. We're kind of Little England again, and we're not selling it abroad. Have you got any suggestions there?
Well, some of the educational software is now being sold abroad. I launched a scheme for one of the educational publishers, a whole series of projects which are now being translated from English into continental languages. You mustn't forget that in the last century, British textbooks spread over the world. Remember Durrell's algebra, Kennedy's Latin primer? Well, the textbooks today are those discs that they've been popping into their disk drives. And that's a very big business for us if we can get the act together. And it's quite difficult to get the act together. You've got to get educational publishers, you've got to get the people who are very good at writing the software, usually in the academic world, and don't forget the teachers. Because some of the very good software is being written by teachers and sixth formers now.
Excellent. I do have one call for you. Would you prepare to take a telephone call?
Yeah.
We have a call on line 1, Andrew Rhodes. Hello, Mr. Rhodes. Where are you calling from?
Northampton.
What's your question?
Yes, good morning, Minister.
Morning.
I was just wondering whether there could be any incentives for British companies to buy British technology to support the growth of the market over here.
For British companies?
Yes.
Well, the best incentive is that the British technological industry should produce the goods that, in fact, those companies want to buy. We have given direct incentives for schools, of course.
Yeah.
That was the initiative we took 2 years ago to provide 50% funding to buy, in fact, British microcomputers, and we've extended that to add-on bits of equipment like VDUs and some of the equipment now for primary schools and secondary schools. So we have taken a definite policy to try to encourage the development of British companies making this equipment, and it's working well. In Britain, we now have the fastest growing electronic industry in Europe. And I think that is as a result of a great deal of native talent in Britain, but also quite a bit of encouragement from the government.
Yes, I deal with a lot of companies during the course of my general work, and a lot of them which are related to American companies or associated to them have a policy to buy American equipment. I find it very frustrating that there isn't a sort of reciprocal arrangement, or at least if certainly the everything is equal as far as equipment goes, that they would buy from a British company.
Well, I think when it was the big mainframes, we have one very good mainframe manufacturer, ICL, but now with the development of the micros and minis, there's a whole range. There are about 40 companies in Britain making micros, and they've all developed in the last 3 or 4 years. We've got a real breakthrough here, and now we're getting companies in the UK making disk drives and all the other peripherals, like that company Microvitec. So it's really happening here. It's exciting to be in this industry in Britain at this time.
Thank you very much for your call, Mr. Rhodes. Also, of course, there are a lot of American companies who've set up manufacturing over here as well, and a tremendous investment.
A large number of them. They've done it because they want to use British brainpower and British expertise, quite frankly.
Can we go on to this software competition, which sounds extremely exciting?
Well, this is an exciting competition, which I'm very pleased to announce today. The prizes are £32,500, and it's for schools, for secondary schools. And secondary schools are being asked to write some software about the school, or for use in the school, or for, it hasn't got to be educational necessarily, possibly the school's relationship with the local community, something like that. You've got to apply for an entry form in November. You've got to send in the software by the end of February next year. There'll be regional prizes as well. We're looking for something innovative, interesting, different, and the prizes can be spent on British equipment, or any sort of equipment, I hope British equipment, for the schools. So I hope youngsters who are watching this program will tell their teachers that they should apply. I hope that if any teachers are watching, as I'm sure they will apply. They should go to it, or if you like to use the computer phrase, go to.
Excellent. Well, I hope it's successful. There are 48 prizes, I gather, so it's not just 1 or 2, and the first prize is how much?
Is £5,000.
Fine. Well, if you want more details, you can get an entry form. You just write at the address. That'll be given to you at the end of the programme. Thank you very much, Minister. It's also been given in this week's Radio Time on page 83. Well, let's have a look at how our own software writers have been getting on. 2 hours isn't a very long time to write any sort of programme, so they're really, to some extent, throwing it together, particularly under these sort of conditions where if anything's going to go wrong, it will go wrong. The only thing that has gone wrong so far is the clock. Right, would you like to run your programme?
Right, well, it's running at the moment. It now, as well as previously it was just displaying the thing, now it also flashes the colours. We also have a few more fill-ins, as we call them, so between each one. This is one. It's going rather slowly, but keep going. And then it will cycle around to another one, and you can fast forward.
Need a ticket, we can fix it. Smudge Enterprises, I see. So
you can cycle through the colours very fast if you need to go, which will then go on to the next fill-in and so on. So you can fast forward, or it'll just wait. If you just leave it all alone, it'll just go at its own speed.
Did you just code it up yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't write any sort of flowcharts in. Oh, there's 1 or 2 little pieces of code you wrote down.
Yes, there are pieces of code written down, but no flowcharts.
Could we just list the programme out and have a look at it?
Yes. Basically, at the end, there's all the subroutines there for the square.
I see. So you've got all of them basically in procedures.
Yeah.
I
right.
see.
Yes.
How many lines of code is it approximately?
Well, it's 150 roughly. And there's the various data for the ads at the end.
Do you think it would work? I mean, do you think it would be usable?
Oh yes, it does actually work. It's fairly reliable as far as we can tell so far.
What else would you have to do with it to make it really into a saleable program, do you think?
Perhaps put a few more things in, like we were thinking at one point of putting in arrows pointing into its centre as another eye-catching thing.
Could you write again?
Yeah.
There we go, Alan's newsagent.
It just cycles round. There's about 4 or 5 ads, and it just keeps cycling around. It's a 15-second wait.
Have you got on, man? Run.
Not too bad. Not too bad. We didn't do all the screens. We had lots of ideas for putting some graphics in to display a picture of what they were trying to sell or advertise, but really just not enough time to do that. So we've done several different sorts of text in different colours.
This is on the RML machine, isn't it? The 5 to
right.
Z. I'm not really too familiar with that. Oh, that's nice.
So that's just sort of to catch people's attention. And then there's some letters with some shadow to make it stand out.
Two for Fair Dream. Titley, that's our director. Is he selling his motorbike? Perhaps you'd after this programme.
And I think it's probably about the same length as...
About 150 lines of
something like that,
code.
yeah.
Uh-huh. What would you do to improve it if you had more time?
Throw it away and start again.
One thing I'd certainly do is I'd write a lot more machine code in it for doing fast animated graphics and things. A motorcycle running across the screen, that sort of thing.
You need speed and colour to catch people's eye, really.
Yeah, of course, the newsagent himself would have to be able to write his own adverts in, wouldn't it? So it would have to be very easy to use. That would be quite... Usually the parts of inputting data into a big program is quite hard to get it right, to make sure you've got the correct data in.
Yeah.
The newsagent would have to have quite a big interface at the front, wouldn't it?
Yes, we were told not to bother doing that.
Oh, no, I know.
but
I'm just
we
talking
could.
about generally.
Yes,
That would be
indeed,
quite a
that would be
longish
nice.
piece of program to make it into a complete exercise, so he could just simply type in on... Would you put it on a series of menus or something like that?
Something like that. You've got to take into account the fact that he's probably going to make a lot of mistakes. So you've got to program to take that into account. Whereas if you've got an experienced user, you can write a very much more simple program because you know what he's going to enter into the keyboard.
In doing it under the short time frame, did you put any crash proofing in?
No, none at all.
Did you do that?
Virtually none. I mean, there's no real crash proofing to put in because we're not allowing the user to do very much with it. It's just running the program.
We are going to make these programs available, by the way, to anybody who writes in for them and who might like to use them. Charles, how have you got on?
Well, not too bad. We got the double height characters working okay. And as you see, it's drawing rather slowly because we're actually doing all kinds of dirty machine code tricks, actually getting the character pattern from the ROM, and in BASIC taking it up bit by bit and putting it on the screen because there's nothing within the BASIC. In machine code, it'd be almost instantaneous, and so that's one improvement I'd make. Having done that and got everything nicely centered up, we went to try and put some colors into it, and we were hoping, and you see there's a slightly different behavior at the top, we were hoping for a sort of flashing highlight on the main title there, but it never came about. It didn't quite work, so we went back to an old version.
This is a Sinclair ZX Spectrum. That's by far the cheapest machine in this range.
It's a cheap machine, and in some respect it's very good. It has very large memory and that, but the BASIC, it just doesn't have large character within its BASIC, and so if you want large characters, you have to go outside the BASIC.
What would you have done to improve it if you'd had more time?
I think the sort of thing I'd go for is an animated character, sort of pulling the characters on by string or something like that. Something really fast.
And for cell rotating around, so there's a moving display.
We did think of doing that, but it takes, as you see, it takes so long to actually draw it in BASIC that it would have been painful on the eye.
Right. What else would you do? Could we have a list of it?
Sure.
How many instructions was yours? It probably was pretty long, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, it's not that long. It's not
It's
that
not
long.
too bad. No, it's about the same as the other. Have you anything else you'd do if you could spend more time on it to improve it?
Well, I think I'd throw it away and start again.
As everybody said.
Yes. I mean, that's what you do in practice when you're programming. You write something up and you look at it and you realize your mistakes and you start all over again. And that's the strength of BASIC, in that you can get things going very quickly. And we do that. It's always slow, but at least you get a rough idea what it's about. So even in machine code, I'd start this way.
Well, thanks a lot, and thank all of you for your bold and brave efforts, and everybody else who's been in the studio. Well, next year, as well as a new series on robots, we're also doing one on the electronic office, or the office of the future, or whatever it's called. We'll let you know when we find out. That's it. Have a good lunch. Goodbye.
And a fact sheet which gives more information about the BBC's computer literacy project and the entry forms for the BBC software competition for schools are both available by sending a self-addressed envelope 12 inches by 9 with a 21p stamp to Broadcasting Support Services, P.O. Box 7, London W3 6XJ. And don't forget to indicate which item it is that you require. And a reminder that the entry forms for the software competition are only available to schools. You can also find that address on page 83 of this week's Radio Times.